Thank you for coming. Welcome to our Boli, to our session after lunch. It's very exciting. We have a lot of interesting reading now for you. It's called GALF 2024 Readings, Bhagrat by Jayanti Naik, plus the English translation by Augusto Pinto, with Dhaee Akhar Goa, Arti Das, Ramita Gurav, Mamata Verlekar, and Asavari Gurav. So over to them. Thank you again for coming. If you know any of your friends outside who'd like to join us, please ask them to come. It's going to be a great afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Arti Das, and welcome to this short story reading session by Dhaee Akhar Goa at this 12th edition of Goa Art and Literature Festival 2024. We are gathered here to present two short stories by renowned Konkani writer and folklorist Dr. Jayanti Naik. Dr. Jayanti Naik is a household name in the field of Konkani literature, who through her works speaks about the indigenous communities of Goa, whose voice we otherwise hardly hear in our mainstream conversations. She, through her writings, portrays the hardships and the realities of these marginalized communities that also include strong feminist voice, as many of her stories are about women. Dr. Naik gives a voice to them through her literature. Dr. Jayanti Naik, who hails from the quaint village of Amona in Kepe Taluka of South Goa, published her first book in the year 1989. It was a collection of short stories titled Garzan. She has authored around 49 books, which include scholarly works mainly related to folklore and fiction. Her creative writing comes in an array of genres, ranging from short story and drama to poetry and children's literature, as well as essay and long story. Some of her noteworthy titles are Garzan, Athang, Arti, Tichi Kani, to name a few. Among folklore, some of her well-known works are Amone Ek Lokjin, Lokbim, Pednecha Dasara, Gudband in Marathi. Her work is translated in English, Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam languages. Her literature, as well as her folklore work, is studied at primary to postgraduate level. Her poetry book, Mirgveno, has appeared in Marathi, and her selected short stories are translated in English, titled The Salt of the Earth by Augusto Pinto. She worked as a folklore researcher at Goa Konkani Academy for 31 years. She has been conferred with numerous state and national awards and honors. Today we are presenting two of her short stories, Bhagrat, and the English translation by Augusto Pinto titled The Victory, which is based on Dr. Naik's original story titled Zaid. These stories will be presented by members of Dhaee Akhar. We have with us Mamata Verlekar. She is an assistant professor in Hindi at Shenoy Goebab School of Languages and Literature at Goa University. She is also a poet. In July 2022, she released her first book on poetry in Konkani titled Dhag. Her second book of poetry will be released soon. The next presenter is Asavari Gurav. She is a multidisciplinary artist who has studied art from MS University of Baroda. She is also a writer, performer, and educator. Her work is exhibited at various art galleries of Goa, Delhi, Ahmedabad, and has performed at various theatre festivals. And last, we have with us Dr. Ramita Gurav. She is an associate professor at St. Xavier's College, Mapsa, where she is teaching Hindi for more than 25 years now. Recently, she translated a collection of short stories of Konkani writer and Gyanpith awardee Damodar Mauza in Hindi titled Mannat, published by Vani Prakashan, and prior to that, Sapna Premi, published by Rajkamal Prakashan. She is also a theatre personality. I would also like to take this opportunity to speak about our group, Dhaee Akhar Goa. We are a 5-year-old Goa-based cultural group founded by like-minded individuals that share common love and passion for art, culture, literature, and ecology. We conduct various events like play presentation, short story reading sessions, where we have presented stories of renowned writers like Sadat Hasan Manto, Premchand, Kashinath Singh, Girish Karnat, Damodar Mauzo, to name a few. The name of the group is inspired by Kabir's couplet that says, पोठी पढ़ी जग मुआ पंडित भया न कोई, धाई आखर प्रेम का पढ़े सो पंडित होए. The main aim of the group is to spread love. With that message of love, let us begin our short story reading session. We start with the short story titled Bhagrat. It is in Konkani. So it's the story of a Bhagrat who is a woman named Bhagrat, lives in a remote village of Goa. The story narrates the plight of a single woman through Bhagrat who has to face many challenges in this patriarchal world, and how the man and the society are easy to target and defame her for living her life according to her wishes. But does this man-made society make possible for her? Let's explore with this story. The story will be narrated by Mamata Verlekar and Ramita Gurav.
सकाळची 8 वरां जाल्लीं. हांव ऑफिसान वचपाची तयारी करतालें. इतल्यान साळू मावशी दुत्त करून दारान उबी जाली. कितें जालें गे साळू मावशे? आज सकाळी सकाळीशी कसली खबर हाडल्या? हांवें म्हळें. म्हजो प्रस्न आयकून साळू मावशी खबर कसली खबर कसली म्हणून गडबडली. साळू मावशी म्हळ्यार एक नंबरची गांव भवानी. दीसभर गांवचो उश्टवारो हुंगीत हुंगीत भोंवता. गांवार कोणागेर कितें घडलां ताचो तिका पयली वास. केन्ना तिचो कुलो आपल्या घरान तेकना. केन्ना हाच्या दारान केन्ना ताच्या दारान हेडिल्लीच आसता ती त्रिकाळ. ना घोव ना भुरगें. साडो सुडो एकटो जीव. रांदल्यारूय जाता ना रांदल्यारूय जाता. दीसभर भोंवता गांवच्यो चवकश्यो करीत. कसली खबर कळे उपरांतूय ती ओगी बसना. खबर गांवभर करप आपली जबाबदारीच मानून कासाटो मारून ती वावराकूय लागता. हालींसराक गांवार कितें घडटा तें म्हाका कळप ती आपलें कर्तव्य मानता. तिचे नदरेन ती म्हजेर उपकारच करता. नाजाल्यार गांवान कितें घडटा ताची खबर म्हाका कशी कळपाची? नोकरेक लागच साकून म्हजो गांवाकडलो संपर्क तुटला. सकाळीं उठून घरांतल्यान भायर सर ते रातचे भितर यो. शेनवार आयतार खंय ना खंय कार्यावळ वा मिटींग. आई आसतना गांवान कोणागेर कितेंय बरें वायट जाल्यार म्हज्या कानार घालताली. ताका लागून वेळान वेळ काडून गांवच्यांक पाचारप, खबर घेवप जातालें. आई वचत साकून फाटल्या 4 वर्सां साळू मावशेन ती आपली जबाबदारी मानल्या आनी ती आमचेर प्रसन्न जाल्या. खरें म्हळ्यार म्हाका तिचे गांव धवळे आवडनात. म्हज्या बापाय भावांकूय आवडनात. पूण करतली कितें? अडिल्ल्या वेळार कित्याकय हात बोट घालूंक ती येता. म्हणटकच तिचें जग पुराण आयकून घेवचें पडलें ना? ना म्हळ्यार गांवान कितें घडटा हाचो वास आमकां तिका लागूनच लागता.
खबर काय ना गो बाये. पुणून तुका सांगतलें म्हणून हांव फाटले 2 दीस जाले चोयता. तूं म्हाका जापेकूच मेळना. त्या पसत हांव आज सकाळ फुडेंच येयलां. साळू मावशी आपल्या मुखापदार आयली. कोणाक कितें जालें गे? गांवान सगळें बरें मगे? गो गांवान सगळें बरें गो म्हाजे दुये. गांवा भायरूच बरें ना. ती मड्डे वयली भागरत जाणा मगो तूं? ती चड बरी ना. सामकी मरणांक आसा खंय. कांक्र जाला खंय तिका गळ्याचो. अशें? खंय आसा तर गे ती आतां? हॉस्पिटलान बी घातल्या काय ना तिका? घातल्या. त्या कामतीच्या चेड्यान जेंगेर ती पयलू वावर करताली तेणी व्हरून घातल्या खंय. पुणून ती सामकी पोस्टेन पडल्या. गो म्हऱ्यान राव बसून कोण ना खंय बाय तिच्या? ना? आनी तिचो पोसको चेडो खंय गेलो तर गे? चेडो? साळू मावशी म्हजेर एकदम उसळ्ळी. तो चेडो खंयचो गो तिचो? पिशार पडला तूं? मीण मुगो तो तिचो? शी. उलयता कितें गे तूं साळू मावशे? हांवें म्हळें. उलयता कितें? गांवान सगळ्या लोकांक तेंचें सूत आसा तें खबर आसा आनी तुकाच खबर ना. हागून गूख हातलो भुरगो पुसून जाणा मुगो. साळू मावशी कॅच्च करून म्हज्या आंगार आयली तशें हांवूय तांबडें जालें. आगे पुणून तूंच एक दीस सांगताली न्ही गे तिगेलें घर आनी रावता तो जागो देवस्थानान तिच्या पोसक्या चेड्याच्या नांवार केला म्हणून. केल्यार आनी त्या शिवाक लग्न केलो ना तिणें. पुणून तेंची दाटी आसलेली ती न्हू जाल्या. साळू मावशेन तशें म्हणनाका म्हाका कितें उलोवचें तेंच सुचना जालें. हांव ओगीच रावलें. आपल्यालें आसलेलें तेचेर खोट मारून तिणें पर लागीं केलो. दुसऱ्याल्या घोवाक येंग मारली म्हणून तो आपलो जाता, दुसऱ्यालो तो दुसऱ्यालो. पयसो आटको आयदन खोलो थोडो नासलेलो तिचे कडेन. बँकान 20,000 आसलेले खंय. ते भायर म्हयनो माल सरकारी पोटगी येता. सगळे घातले त्या धगड्याच्या हड्ड्यार आनी बसली सामकी सुळसुळीत जावन. आतां 2 येळेच्या गोट्याक पातीशेर जाल्या. सगळे आपल्या नांवार जायसर तो घेवन नाचलो हिका तळटार. मागीर उडयली काडून कणशाक. आयज आपल्याच घरान तिका मरोंक थारो ना. पयलीं वयार आसतना एक शेण खाल्लेलें तें खाल्लेलें. जाणटेपणांत हिका कसली खाज येयलेली गो. आमी रावली नान घोव मरतकूत रेस्पेदान. म्हाजो घोव मेल्लेलो तेन्ना हांव सामकी वया वयली दुसमुसूळ बायल मुगो. हां आनी तो कितें गांव देशाचो तरी. तो घाटी मुगो जातीचो. तेणें मारली मजा जाय तशी हिच्या बरोबर. जाय तशी धुवन घेयली आनी तो आतां हिच्या ताळ्यार आगोंक बुसोन तयार ना. ती इतकी वर्सां वावर करताली ती मनशां मात बरी. आं ही तांकां दीसभर थोडी जळे नासलेली. पुणून तेणी हिका आज परसंगार सोडली ना. हिचें चड जालां म्हणून कळटकूच त्या अजितानूच खंय तिका हॉस्पिटलान व्हरून घातली. दोतोराक सांगून सगळें वखद पाणी फुकट करून घेतलें. पुणून हिच्या म्हऱ्यांत रावपाक कोण नाका. तो परकी बामण मनीस. तो कसो रावतलो हिच्या म्हऱ्यांत. तरी दर 2 दिसांनी वचून येता खंय तो तिचे खबरेक. त्याच सोरान मात खंय आजून तिच्या म्हऱ्यांत पांयो दिलो ना. ना म्हणून बायलेकूय धाडली ना. आतां रांडला खंय पश्चाताप जाला आपले करणेचो. काय बरो घोव आसतना आपूण गांवार वचून पडली ती चूक जाली म्हणून रडटा खंय ती आतां. पयर ऑपरेशनाक व्हरच्या वेळार नर्स घोमटेचो मणी काडूंक गेल्यार खंय मेल्ल्याक बॉब मारता तशी मारली तिणें. पिड्डुकाचें पोड हाती घेवन हो हो करून रडली खंय ती.
भागरतीक लेखून आनीकय जायते कितें उलोवपाचें साळू मावशेच्या पोटान आशिल्लें. पूण हांव कांयच हुंकार दिना तें पळोवन ती अशीय जाली. आनी वयता गो बाय हांव. म्हाज्या लागाडीक लागल्यार तूं आनी आज ऑफिसाक पावचें ना. अशें म्हणत दोनूच दांगा करून घरांतल्यान भायर सरून गेली. साळू मावशी गेली आनी हांव खूबच अस्वस्थ जालें. म्हज्या अस्वस्थ जावपा फाटल्यान 3 कारणां आशिल्लीं. पयलें भागरतीक कांक्र जालां हें. दुसरें पोटान पिकिल्लो नासलो तरी मायेन लागीं केल्लो आदार आसूनय भागरती आज अनाथ कशी हॉस्पिटलाचे खाटीर तळमळटा हें. तिसरें साळू मावशेन सांगिल्ले भागरतीच्या आनी शिवाच्या संबंदांचे. वयल्या दोनूय कारणां परस हें तिसरें कारणच म्हाका चड अस्वस्थ करतालें. खरेंच काय भागरतीचे आनी शिवाचे तसले संबंद आशिल्ले. एकाद्र्याक आपलो भुरगो म्हणून मानतकच ताचे कडेन शरीर संबंद दवरूं येतात मनशाच्यान. तोवूय सगळी इंद्रियां आवयटकच. काय ह्यो लोकांचे तकलेंतल्यो काणयो. एक वेळ दिसतालें आसूं येत तांचे मदीं तसले संबंद. ही आवयच्या वयाची आनी तो भुरग्याचे पिरायेचो असल्यार कितें जालें. शेवटाक ही बायल तो दादलो आनी कुडीचे भुकेक दोळे नासतात. जनावरांच्यो मादयो जुळनात आपणे जल्म दिल्ल्या नरां कडेन. मनीस जातीचो इतिहास सोदूंक गेल्यार आदीम काळार मनशां मदीं नात्याचे धरबंद खंय आशिल्ले. कोणी कोणाय बरोबर न्हिदतालो, कोणी कोणाय बरोबर जुंवयटालो. आनी भागरतीची दादल्याची भूक तर तशें पळोवपाक गेल्यार अतृप्त सुरिल्ली.
तिका नाण आयिल्लें खंय 12व्या वर्सा. ती घोवाक सोडून गेल्ली 32व्या वर्सा. 12 ते 32 म्हणजे सारकी 20 वर्सां ती घोवागेर उरली. पूण ह्या 20 वर्सां तिचो घोव विठ्ठल सारको खंय घरादाराक आशिल्लो. दिसवड्याचो काम धंदो सोदीत तो गांव गांव हेट्टालो. फकत परबे सणांक येवचो तो घरा. तेन्नाय ती एका हातरुणार न्हिदूंक पावतालीच अशें ना. केन्ना गांवांत जागोर, केन्ना हिची अडचण. केन्ना मायलें मायपण चाळवून येतालें आनी ती तांचे न्हिदपाकुडी दारार हातरुणां घालून न्हिदताली. ज्या नागू गांवकाराचो हात धरून ती गेली ताचोय सांगात तिका फकत 3 वर्सांच मेळ्ळो. तो मेलो तेन्ना ती 35 वर्सांची आशिल्ली. घडये वर्सांची वर्सां दाबून उरिल्ली तिची ती भूक जाणटेपणांत वयर सरली आसत. आनी भागरत ती कोणाक मीठ मारपी. जाली इत्सा घेतली आसतली भागोवन. दुसरे वटेन भागरत असलें हळशिकावणें कर्म करीत म्हणून मनाक कशेंच पटनाशिल्लें. म्हजे आईन भागरतीची जी खबर म्हाका सांगिल्ली तिचे वयल्यान ती तोंड फटकळ आसूं पूण सोशीक आनी संस्कारीत म्हणपाचें स्पश्ट जाल्लें. ती घोवाक सोडून दुसऱ्याचो हात धरून गेल्ली खरी तरी त्या वचपाक रजाव आशिल्लें. तिच्या वचपाचो दोश फकत तिका एकटेकूच दिवंक मेळनाशिल्लो. म्हज्या भुरगेपणांत भागरतीचें नांव घेवपाचेर गांवांत बंदी आशिल्ली. ती रावता त्या वाठारांत पसून कोणें झळकूंक जायना अशी 10 जाणांची शिटकावणी आशिल्ली. पूण लोक आनी ओक सारकी. लिपया चोरयां जावं ते भागरतीची खबर उलयतालेच.
अशेंच कोणी तरी तिची खबर उलयतना ती म्हज्या कानार गेल्ली. तेन्ना हांव 12-13 वर्साचें आसत. येवन रोखडेंच हांवें आईक ते विशीं विचारिल्लें. तेन्ना तिची खबर सांगून आईन म्हणिल्लें, दुसऱ्या दादल्याचो हात धरून गेली म्हणून अजाप, इतलो तेंप ती घोवा बरोबर रावली कशी तें खरें अजाप. म्हयने म्हयने घोवाचें तोंड दिसप ना, पानार सारकें अन्न ना. मायन आपणें जेवप आनी शितान उदक घालून दवरप. दिसवड्याच्या वावराक गेल्यारय दिसवडो मायच्या हातार दवरपाचो, नाजाल्यार माय सान्नी म्हणूच घेवन लागताली फाटल्यान. पूण खरें सांगूं, त्या दिसा गांव चवकशे वेळार हिची बाजू कोणें आयकुनूच घेतली ना. घेतिल्ली जाल्यार ती घडये आज गांवांत उरतली आशिल्ली. मांडा वयलो तांतयो पिलो लागलो हिच्या शिलार थुकूंक. तशें हिगेलेंय तेंप पेटलें. हागता हांव असल्या गांवाचेर आनी घोवाचेर. कांय करनासतना तुमी केलें म्हणटात जाल्यार आतां हांव तेचे बराबर न्हिदूनच दाखयतली तुमकां. अशें म्हणून तिणें 10 जाणांक सांगलें. तें आयकून गांवच्याले सामकें तापले. असली बायल गांवांत नाकाच म्हणलें सगळ्यांनी. तिचे मायन आनी घोवान चवकशी मागिल्लीच इतले खातीर. तांच्या मना सारकें जाल्लें. नागू गांवकार मात ह्या वेळार तिचे फाटल्यान रावलो. आपल्याक लागून तिका गांव शेणलो तें पळोवन तोवूय गांवाचेर खोंट मारून तिच्या सांगाताक गेलो. ना म्हळ्यार ताच्या काळजान तिचे विशीं वोड आशिल्लीच.
आईन सांगिल्लें ताचे वयल्यान भागरत म्हाका सामकी धाडशी दिसली. तिच्या धाडसाचें सामकें नवलय दिसलें. त्या काळार एखाद्रे बायल मनशेन गांवच्या 10 जाणां कडेन येदी व्हडली तेमां खेळप म्हटल्यार. भागरत 7 वर्सांची आशिल्ली तेन्ना खंय तिका आमच्या गांवांत लग्न करून हाडिल्ली. व्हंकलेक विकती घेवन केल्लें लग्न तें. अशा लग्नात व्हंकलेक आवयलें घर सामकें तुट्टा. तिका आवयलें घरचें नातें उरना आनी घोवाच्या घरची आपणें फारीक केल्ल्या भाताच्या वा पयशांच्या नांवार मुखार तिका जाय तशी घुळोवन वसुली करून घेतात. विकती हाडिल्ली म्हूण तिका घरात कांय मानूय उरना. उतरा पावलाक तिका विकती घेतिल्ल्याचे थोमणे आयकुचे पडटात. भागरतीच्या वाट्याक हे वैदावास आयले. भागरतीचो माव खंय बारीक जोराच्या दुयेंसान मेल्लो. ताका लागून आशी कुशीच्या गांवांनी तिच्या घोवाक कोणूच चेडू दिना जालें. तेन्ना तिचे मायन दाबाळी गांवांतल्यान गरजेक आयिल्ल्या भागरतीच्या बापाय कडल्यान 2 मुडी भाताक भागरतीक विकती घेतिल्ली आनी पुताक लग्न केल्लो. पूण भागरतीची माय आपूण गरजेक आयिल्ली तें विसरली आनी मुखार भागरत घरांतल्यान वचसर तिका तिच्या बापायच्या गरजेचे थोमणे दीत रावली. काळी भिल्ल, नाक खंय दोळे खंय अशी थपक्या आंगलोटाची भागरत. बापूय कितें आनी आवय कितें हें कळच्या आदींच काच्यापुच्या भावंडांतल्यान घोवागेर पावली. तिचो घोव एकटोच. तो आवय बस म्हणटा थंय बसपी आनी उठ म्हणटा तेन्ना उठपी. घरान आवयलेंच राज्य.
भागरतीचें भुरगेपण सोंपूंक नाशिल्लें. ती कितेंय काम सांगल्यार तें थंयच सांडून खेळूंक नाचूंक धांवताली. तेन्ना तिका मायक सट्टीक पेट घालताली, उपाशी तपाशी दवरताली. एकदां खंय तिचे मायन तापिल्लो कायलाथो तिचे जांगेर दवरिल्लो. मायल्यो गाळी विस्ती खायत भागरत व्हड जाली, नाती धुती जाली. आतां तिकाय तोंड सुटिल्लें. मायच्या गाळींक ती आतां गाळयांनीच जाप दिवंक लागली. पूण रान्नी कडेन मात तिका राज्य करूंक मेळना. माय मडक्यान कितें सांडटा तेंच तिका खावचें पडटालें. 1-2दां तिणें घोवाक सांगपाचो यत्न केलो तेन्ना घोव उरफाटो तिचेरच खुबून तिका मारूंक आयलो. ह्या सगळ्याचेर उपाय म्हूण भागरतीन एक दीस वेगळी पेज शिजयली. तिच्या कर्मान त्याच दिसा तिचो घोव घरा पावलो. तो हुमऱ्या भितर सरचोच आसा मायन ताचे कान फुकले. ताणें आनी वेळ केलो ना. दाणो घेवन चुली वयली मडकी फोडली आनी चेडयेक वेगळाचार जाय घे वेगळाचार सारको अशें म्हणत तोच दाणो घेवन लागलो तिचे फाटल्यान. तेन्ना 2 दीस बाबडी भागरत शेतांतल्या तणा गोडव्यान लिपून रावली. भागरतीक भुरगें जायना म्हणूनूय माय तिका दीसभर खेपताली. तेन्ना मात भागरत मनांतल्यान निनयटाली. खरें तिकाय भुरगें जाय आशिल्लें. हेर बायलांक भुरग्यांक हांडीर मारून भोंवता तें पळोवन तिका आपलें वांजळेपण जाणवतालें. पूण ती आपल्याक वांजूड मानूंक तयार जायना आशिल्ली. घोव दादलेपणाचें सुखूच सारकें दिना तर भुरगे कशे जायत म्हूण चिंतताली. एकदां खेपतले मायक तिणें तशें म्हणून दाखयलेंय बी. मागीर तिचे मायन तिच्या 7 पिळग्यांचो जो उद्धार केलो तो आयकुपाचो न्हय.
पयलीं मायन धाडली म्हणून, मागीर घरांतल्यान भायर सुटूंक मेळटा म्हणून भागरत दिसवड्याच्या वावराक वचूंक लागली. दिसवड्याच्या वावरांतल्यान ती टाकार पावली. थंयच तिची आनी नागू गांवकाराची दोस्ती जाली. लांब रूंद काणो कसो नागू बायल मनशेच्या वाऱ्याक आशेल्लोच. ताची बायल बाळंतपणान मरून 10 वर्सां जाल्लीं. जाल्लें भुरगें वाचूंक पावंक नाशिल्लें. आतां तो घरांत एकटोच रांदून जेवतालो. दोस्ती जाल्ली, एकमेका बरोबर हांसता किटकिट्टा आसली तरी तांणी मान मर्यादेची शीम हुपूंक नाशिल्ली. पूण लोकांनी घोड्याचो हत्ती केलो. तेन्नाचो गांव. लोकांक खबऱ्यांक असलेच विशय. म्हणचे पयलींच खबर भागरतीचे मायच्या कानार पावली. तिणें केलें आकाश पाताळीक. मनीस धाडून 8 दिसां भितर पुताक आपोवन हाडलो आनी घातली 10 जाणांक चवकशी. गांवान गांवकारांची सत्ता. नागू गांवकाराक कोणें दोश दिलो ना. दिलो फकत भागरतीक. भर दनपारच्या कडार ते दीस भागरत गांवची शीम हुपून गेली. तिच्या सांगातान नागू गांवकारूय गेलो. रिती प्रमाण 10 जाणांनी भागरतीचे मायक भागरतीक तिच्या वाट्याचो आयदन खोलो, एक मणभर भात आनी 8 दिसांक पेजेक लागतले तांदूळ दिवंक सांगले. भागरतीक त्या किद्याचीच इत्सा नाशिल्ली. तरी तिका ते बरोबर व्हरचेच पडिल्ले. रावपाचो थारो उबो जायसर पोटाची कितें तरी वेवस्था जावंक जाय आशिल्ली.
सातेर देवस्थाना कडेन जागो मागून नागून आपल्याक आनी भागरतीक रावंक गांवा भायर मड्डेर एक ताळ्या खोप बांदली. शेजार पाजारच्या गांवांनी मेळटा तो वावर करून ती आपलें पोट भरूंक लागली. दुखातच सूख सोदूंक लागली. तांचो संवसार बरो फुलून येवंक लागलो. भागरतीक दिसलें आतां आपले वैदावास सोंपले. पूण दैवाच्या मनान वेगळेंच आशिल्लें. एक दीस कोणाली तरी तोरां काडूंक गेल्ले कडेन नागू झाडा वयल्यान पडून मेलो. खऱ्या अर्थान भागरत आतां उगडी पडली. नागूचे क्रियाकर्म ताच्या भावांनी केले. तो गेल्ल्याची खबर कळना फुडें तांणी ताचें मडें भायले भायर गांवांत व्हेलें. भागरतीक ताचेर निमणी नदरूय घालूंक मेळिना. तिका खूब्ब दुख्ख जालें. 3 वर्सांच ती ताचे बरोबर राविल्ली खरी, पूण ताणें 30 वर्सांचें सूख दिल्लें तिका. भागरतीन नागूचे 12 दीस सुतक पाळ्ळें. मात तो वतकच कपलाचो कुकूम पुसलो ना, गळ्यांतलो मणी काडलो ना. तो काय ताणें घातिल्लो नाशिल्लो. नागू वचून म्हयन्या भितरच भागरतीन कामतिल्या घरचो वावर धरलो. तो उणी पुरी 20 वर्सां तिणें केलो. आपली कूस फळ्ळी नासली तरी कामतिल्या भुरग्या नातरांचे घुमूत तिणें आपलेपणान काडलें. ताणी तिका आपले घरची कशीच वागयली. जेवंक खावंक न्हेसपाक पांघरूंक केन्ना तिका पातीशीर केली ना. इतलें करून तिचो म्हयन्याचो पगार ताणी वेवस्थीत बँकान घालून दवरलो, तिच्या जाणटेपणाची ठेव म्हणून.
इतलीं वर्सां जाल्लीं. आतां म्हातारपणान सुशेग घेता म्हणून भागरतीन फाटलीं 6 वर्सां जालीं कामतिलो वावर सोडिल्लो. तरी ती तांगेर येवन वचून आशिल्ली. घरांतल्या कार्याक 8 दीस आदींच वचून रावताली. शिवा कामतिल्या च्याच्या दुकानार कामाक आशिल्लो. 8 वर्सांचो आसतना तो थंय आयिल्लो. आतां खाडा मिशांचो मानाय जाल्लो. आवय बापूय गांव घर नाशिल्लो पोर म्हणून भागरतीची ताचे खातीर माया आटली. फाल्यां मेल्यार आपल्याक मातयेक लावंक कोणूय जाय म्हूण तिणें ताका लागीं केलो. आपलें आशिल्लें नाशिल्लें सगळें ताच्या नांवार केलें. ताका लग्न करून ताचो संवसार थाटून दिलो. लग्न जालें तशें ताणें तिका म्हळें, आतां तूं वावर सोड. हांव आसतना तुवें कित्याक गळूंक जाय? तूं सुशेगाद घरा बस नातरांक खेळत. तें आयकून भागरत सामकी नेसणातूच मुतली. सोडलो तिणें वावर रोकडोच. आतां पांयार पांय घालून बसता आपले चौकेर आनी येतल्या वतल्या कडकिता. भागरतीलें घरय आतां पयलींचें ना. तें आतां 2 कुडींचें फुडल्या फाटल्या पाख्यांचें जालां. आदलो थंयचो तळपटो सोडोच थंय ना. आतां थंय बरी व्हडली कॉलनी जाल्या. हे मेरेनची भागरतीची खबर म्हाका आईन सांगिल्ली. हांव तेन्ना गांवांत नवी गो. आनी तेन्ना गांवांत दादल्या मुखार बायलांक उलोवपाक कोण दितालो? तें आयज घडटा जाल्यार हांव चवकशेंत मदीं जाप घालपाची. तेन्ना घालूंक मेळिल्ली जाल्यार ती गांवां भायरी जावची नाशिल्ली. तोंड फटकळ आशिल्ली खरी गो ती, पूण मनान वायटशी नाशिल्ली. कोणेल्याय कामांक हात बोट लायताली आनी कामांक कितें सामकी वाग. लोकांनी कितें सांगू तिचे मायक, पूण म्हाका मात ती नागू बरोबर झिली झोपांनी पडटाली हें कशेंच पटना. लोकांनी हळशीक शेवटिली तेन्नाच ती दोगांय तेमांक पेटलीं हें मात खरें.
भागरत बंडाळी आसूं पूण ती चारित्र्यहीन न्हय अशें आईन सांगिल्ल्या तिच्या खबरी वयल्यान म्हजें मत जाल्लें. कारण सांगपी म्हजी आवय आशिल्ली आनी म्हजे आवयक हांव सारकें बरें वळखतालें. खंयच्याय नाण्याच्यो 2य बाजू पळोवपी. गांवांत वाचूंक बरोवंक जाणा आशिल्ली, भायर संवसारांत कितें चलता हें जाणा आशिल्ली ती पयली बायल. आज साळू मावशेन भागरतीच्या आनी शिवाच्या संबंदा विशीं सांगिल्ली खबर आयकून म्हजी तकली सामकी बेजार जाली. कित्याक रूं नाशिल्ल्याचो पू काडटात लोक? मार फार छळ वैदावास भोगल्यारय बायलांनी दिल्ल्या घराच जीण कुसोवची अशी खासा बायलांचीच इत्सा कित्याक? कोणे एकलेन समाजाची बंधनां शेवटून मारपाचो यत्न केल्यारय लोक वर्साची वर्सां तिची फाट कित्याक सोडिनात? येदोळ उलयतना साळू मावशेन गळ्यांतलो मणी काडटना भागरतीन बॉब मारल्याची खबर सांगिल्ली. खऱ्यांनीच काय तिणें तशी बॉब मारिल्ली? खऱ्यांनीच काय तिचो आजुनूय आपल्या खऱ्या घोवाचेर आनी घरादाराचेर जीव आसा? खऱ्यांनीच काय तिका आपले करणेचो ह्या वेळार पश्चाताप जाता? काय ह्यो लोकाल्यो मोगीच वावड्यो? सुता वयल्यान सर्गार वचपाची बी ही पद्दत न्हय मूं? ऑपरेशनाक व्हरतना मरण दारान पाविल्ल्याचे जाणविकायेन बी तिणें बॉब मारली ना मूं? लोकांनी ताचो वेगळोच अर्थ घेतलो ना मूं? म्हज्या मनान प्रश्नार प्रश्न उठिल्ले. तांच्या माल्या मदीं घुस्पत गिरगिरत हांवें ऑफिसाचो मार्ग धरलो.
देव बरें करूं.
After listening to this thought-provoking story, we now go to our next story. It is the English translation of Jayanti Naik's original story titled Zaid. Its English translation is The Victory, and it is by Augusto Pinto. It is a story set in a remote village where villagers are fighting against a mighty landlord. It is a story of Kushta, a villager who fights for what is right. But does this fight for rights and the truth is that easy? Let's learn about it through this story. It will be presented by Asavari Gurav, Mamata Verlekar, and Ramita Gurav.
In the heat
In the heat of the afternoon sun, all of Gaokar Wado, young and old, men and women, had surged towards the Mand. The men leaned their buttocks on whatever part of the Mand they could manage to find. There was such a crush there that even an ant would have found it difficult to find some place. The women carrying their children under their arms, however, huddled in knots under some trees close by.
Though the searing sun had begun to roast each and every particle of hair on their bodies, nobody seemed willing to move. It must have been 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon. Yet, not one of them felt any pangs of hunger. Even the suckling infants inside the cupboard, distinct to these Gauda women, who normally held on to a knot in the garment as they nuzzled their mothers' breasts, were today staring at the road ahead.
Everyone's eyes were on the road. The suspense about the news that Kushta was to bring was making their hearts thud.
Lord, help us. We must win the case.
We gave money that was kept for our babies and children for your sake, Lord. Don't make our sacrifice meaningless.
Time refused to pass, and there was no sign of Kushta yet. The people were beginning to get impatient, and in the sun, their demeanors drooped like parched flowers. As the heat of the sun became completely unbearable, the men at the Mand began to move away one by one and stand under whatever little bit of shade they could find. But none of them was willing to go home before Kushta returned.
The sun, which had been directly overhead, had by now gone down a few notches when the thirsty eyes of the people began glistening. For in the distance, Kushta and 4 companions from the village could be seen. Everyone began scampering back to the Mand.
Kushta led the group. The other 4 walked a little way behind. Except for Kushta, all of them had their necks bowed and their feet seemed reluctant to move ahead. Kushta's predicament was the worst. Even his breath seemed to have ceased. What was he going to tell the people who were waiting impatiently for the court's verdict? What face had he left? These thoughts had left him numb. By the time Kushta even reached the Mand, the tired and thirsty people had lost patience and everyone gherowed him, everyone speaking at once.
Kushta, what happened? We won, didn't we?
The case went in our favor, didn't it?
Betal's tree's ours, isn't it, Kushta?
Tell us quickly.
Why is your mouth shut?
People began asking one question after another, but Kushta's teeth seemed to be blocking his voice, and words just failed him. Seeing Kushta's disinclination to speak, in the hearts of the people, the proverbial lizard began to ominously cry, "Tsuk tsuk." In panic, they began to question his other companions.
What happened, Gopi? Why is Kushta silent?
Did we not win, Shankar?
Arey, Babusha, open your mouth.
Pandari, why have the bastards locked their mouths?
Seeing the growing disenchantment of the people, Kushta could no longer keep silent. A cry slipped out of his mouth.
We have been cheated, my brothers. We have lost. God abandoned the righteous. He was swayed by money.
Hearing Kushta's words, the entire packed to capacity Mand let out a collective gasp.
What?
Then there was a pin drop silence. It remained like that for quite some time. And then a hubbub began to grow slowly among those dejected people.
Arey, I had warned you right at the start not to get influenced by this fellow's ideas.
He talks big, but lives by begging.
He studied 4 classes and thinks no end of himself.
Arey, this was all a money-making racket. How do you think he could afford to put proper tiles on his roof?
At first, they whispered. But gradually, the voices of the people began to get sharper, and every word began to be spat out phak-phak, like venom spewed by snakes.
For that very reason, I had said that we shouldn't fall for this fellow's fatashos.
Damn the son of a corpse! Hope lightning strikes his house down. The rogue took the money out of the mouths of our children.
Curse him!
Because of this man, we unnecessarily got into the bad books of Parab.
That's true. And in good times and bad, for work and for business, we would go to his doorstep.
Now, do we have any face to go to his house?
If you live in water, you can't afford to make enemies with the big fish. So what if we took the offerings of the temple? At least he would help us in the time of needs.
This fellow won't be able to help us with even a fart. His salary is barely enough to fill his own belly.
Nobody would pay him any attention in the factory. So he came to the village to become a leader.
Do you remember the Advagoshi he spoke when he came to collect money? Now, why has he gagged his mouth? Huh?
He has filled his pockets, isn't it?
We must investigate into this fellow's actions. He will have to bear the consequences.
For deceiving the village, he must not be permitted to stay in the village. From today, boycott his house.
Kushta just kept listening. The words he heard stabbed at his heart, and each word drew blood out in spurts. He hadn't imagined, even in his dreams, that his fellow villagers who had danced with him till yesterday would turn against him the moment they heard that the case was lost. He knew that they would be dejected to learn that the betar tree of the village had slipped out of their hands, but had never suspected that they would ever question his motives.
Right from the time he was a child, he had seen Parab cheat and loot the simple, illiterate villagers. His people uncomprehendingly fell for his wiles, and it made Kushta's mind seethe to watch him put on a smooth talking mask and take in, indeed victimize them. The betal tree was the point from which he wished to rally them to fight against this injustice. And the only motive behind this agitation was to regain for the villagers their due rights there.
From today onwards, nobody in good times or in bad will come by his door. Nobody will go past his door. For Tzavak, no artis will be sung at his house. During Shigmo, the mayor will not perform at his door. This is the proposal of the 10 elders. Is it acceptable to all?
Yes, yes, we agree with the 10 elders.
Yelled the crowd with all their might. Seeing everyone condemn him as they moved away from the mart made Kushta, who was standing up, feel dizzy. He began to feel that on all four sides he was surrounded by pitch darkness. He grabbed his head in both his hands and dropped to the floor. Then one image after another began to dance before his closed eyes.
The peepal tree at the crossroads, the little ghumti of Betal under the tree, the pitch black statue of fierce Betal, the lit ponti filled with oil in front of the statue, a pipe attached to the ponti leading to a tin box, and in front of that, the collection box.
Monday. The crowd at the tree is increasing. Before the ghumti, there is a big pile of coconuts, a stack of camphor, agarbattis. The box in which the oil for the ponti is put is overflowing. The collection box full to the brim. Suddenly, Parab comes to the tree and fills his bag with the coconuts, camphor, agarbattis, oil, the money in the collection box. All of it goes in the bag. He watches this from a distance, his teeth gnawing at his lips.
Many Mondays passed.
A meeting of the village is called at the Zalmi's Mand. He speaks. He asks the people to organize a band against Parab. At first, they are hesitant, but after he explains the position, they become willing.
A confrontation occurs between Parab and the villagers. Parab speaks.
Who are you to question me? The tree is mine. It's in my property. I will do whatever I want with the offerings that are made here.
Hearing this, he explodes.
Who says that the tree is yours? It belongs to the villagers. Our ancestors had built the shrine. It was there before your great-great-grandfather had laid claim to it. The grace of the Lord has grown, and he has begun to grant favors to those who petition him. So be it a flower or be it a petal, the people contributed their might to build the ghumti up in cement and get it tiled. But you have given not a naya paisa, and yet you lay claim to the offerings.
Angry words were answered by angrier ones. The quarrel gets more heated. The next day, Parab enclosed the tree with barbed wire. Kushta begins to explain the law to the people. He awakens their sense of self-esteem, and now the people become willing to go to court.
The people came to their senses. But those who used to earn a living by working in Parab's fields and properties get severely affected. Their throats were scalded by the hot milk they drank.
And now, the entire Mand had turned against him for using trickery to steal all the money they had raised with such difficulty, and now boycotted his household. Some spat at him, others abused him.
These images whirled over and over again before his eyes. They began to goad him. He panics, shivers. He begins to flee any which way he can.
Hoige! A splitting pain shoots through Kushta's head, and his hand unconsciously goes up it.
Kushta lies sprawled under the bibor tree beside the Mharu stone. His head was bruised, and from that bruise, blood oozed. But he didn't have the strength even to wipe off the blood, and lay there utterly stunned. In spite of having truth on his side, he was defeated. The people for whom he had fought tooth and nail were accusing him of embezzlement. These thoughts were tearing apart his heart. The person who defended the sanctity of the deity, the one who spent all the money that had been kept aside for his children, was today forbidden from going to the tree.
And God was watching all this in dumb silence. He had ignored the truth, and he was seduced by liars. Thinking of all this, Kushta was getting demented. He was too exhausted to think.
The twilight hour had begun, and on the ground he grew aware of the dark night ahead. Muttering incoherently, he began to hurl every stone and rock he could find on the ghumti under the tree.
I will not allow a god which gets bribed with Parab's money to remain standing. Not even a fingernail of yours will ever be seen again.
Kushta kept smashing stones like a possessed person into the ghumti till it had turned into a ruin. The Beta's statue was smashed into smithereens, but he continued hammering rocks upon it again and again and again.
Kushta could not recall when he stopped. He could not recall when Parab's people, along with the villagers, began to beat him up. He could not remember when his nose and mouth began bleeding. He could not recall when he lost consciousness.
All he could remember was this. No matter that he had lost the case in the court, he had reduced to nothingness the god who had won by fraud. In spite of losing the case to Parab, he had won.
This brings end to our short story reading session. Now the floor is open for interactions and questions. If anybody would like to say something, comment something, you are most welcome. It's okay? Or you want to say something about Jayanti work? Now,
I'm struck with the power of the meeting. Lots to think about.
yeah.
Take some time to process the meditation with them.
Also, her language is very strong and very like from the ground, like, you can feel the people's emotions through her language very well. So that's the power of her language, I feel.
With the meditation.
Which we in city people are not aware of at all, like what tribals go through. Yeah.
The rule of religion. And what the stories are the
Mike.
I think 40 years
Back when I told Jayanti that we would be reading these two stories, she said actually they are very old. Like she had about 30 to 40 years back she had written both. Exactly, that's what I told her.
You want to say?
I really enjoyed the point presentation because you got really proper in on the stage. And it's like I didn't have I will say thank you again just for the non-studio for the thing. I'm walking.
Okay, we would like to thank Goa Art and Literature Festival 2024 for giving us this opportunity. It's a annual event for us, led Dhaee Akhar, to present our stories here, short stories here, and it's a privilege. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause again for a powerful performance. Thanks, Arti, Ramita, Mamata, and Asavari. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Our next session will be in 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.